There will never be a pitchman better than Billy Mays. Sadly, it has been 15 years since he passed away, and all of us that knew him surely miss him. But I can't think of Billy without smiling. He brought joy into the lives of millions. Today, I sit down with his son, Billy Mays III, to discuss his dad's legacy, some fun behind the scenes stories, and the exciting things that Billy Mays III is working on today. If you're a fan of infomercials or OxyClean or of Billy Mays, this is a must listen to interview.
Are you looking for new ways to make your sales grow? You've tried other podcasts, but they don't seem to know. Harvest the growth potential of your product or service as we share stories and strategies that'll make your competitors nervous. Now, here's the host of the Harvest Growth Podcast, Jon LaClare.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have a very special guest I've been really excited with for the past few weeks as we've had this interview scheduled. I'm speaking with Billy Mays III, Billy Mays' son, who I know a little bit from many years ago. I knew his dad very well. Of course, nobody knows him better than his son. And we're going to talk a little bit about the legacy of Billy Mays the second, his father, what he's done for the world, for OxyClean, for so many brands, but also for many people around him. So we'll talk about his story and also a little bit about what Billy Mays III is doing today to carry on his legacy and build his own legacy. Billy, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm so excited. Now, you and I were chatting for a few minutes before we hit record on this and reminiscing about, it's been a long time since we've seen each other, certainly in person. We did a couple of video shoots together back in my OxyClean days. You worked as a production assistant along with your dad on set quite a few times. Did you say 3 or 4 years, something like that?
I graduated college in 2006, and I think I worked with my dad from about 2007 to 2009 when he died. So 2 years, like over 2 years with him. And then I continued on in the business. And I still kind of work in the business sometimes. So that was my career, behind the scenes commercial production.
Well, very cool. I wish we would have had the chance to work more together, but I had the pleasure a couple of times back in the day as well. Let's just have a conversation, I guess, for the benefit of our audience. But really, I'm excited to have this conversation for myself as well. Let's talk about your background. What was it like growing up with Billy Mays as your dad?
Well, it's kind of funny. My dad, I think you're aware of this, but he didn't really become famous until he was like 40, and he died when he was 50. So from the time I was born, he was in his 20s. Until he was 40, I only knew him as this like traveling salesperson guy who would be working home and garden shows across the country, fairs, boardwalks, the New Jersey, Atlantic City boardwalk, and so it was really weird to me. It was like a carny life kind of thing. And my mom and dad were divorced when I was about 3, and I lived with my mom in Pittsburgh. And my dad traveled all the time. And so therefore there wasn't really like normal custody. It was basically, I would stay with him when he came to town for the Pittsburgh Home and Garden Show. And then like any other time in between that. And sometimes I would go to other cities and visit him for these shows or just wherever he was. Like he lived in Florida for a while. So for me, it was a strange time. I would be like a kid that wandered around these home and garden shows. And funny enough, like my dad was the rock star of these home shows. He was always the biggest seller. Like everyone knew him. Everyone knew me because like I'm talking about all the pitch people. So I always felt like, especially even before he was on TV, because I'd be walking around, they'd be like, "Hey, little Billy," and so I mean that was it. I remember being under the booth while he would be pitching above me. He'd be making salsa with the salsa master, and I'd be playing with X-Men toys literally at his feet while he's doing it. So it's like that evolves into Home Shopping Network, where he goes on to Home Shopping Network, and I would go and visit. I would go late night, 2 a.m. when he'd have these like overnight shoots, and I'd be hanging out in the green room with the makeup lady. Sometimes he'd like bring me on to Home Shopping, like on his airing, just to say hi. And, so it was some exciting stuff like that. But I think the first OxyClean commercial was like 2000, and I just started high school. So throughout high school was when people started to like know the name. And it's weird because in Pittsburgh he was just a celebrity, like a local celebrity, so I didn't know how much it rippled out. But then whenever I went to college in Florida, I remember that I would, every time there was a new class, they would be doing roll call and they say Billy Mays, like, oh, like the guy. And I would always be like, oh, I've never heard of him, what do you mean? And like the whole class would laugh because they all know. But then, it was just a thing. It was a funny thing.
So it's interesting. So, because I think my recollection is his fame from a national perspective really skyrocketed. It felt like it was overnight. You were obviously there and sort of behind the scenes, and in a little different perspective, the internet wasn't really around, right? Not in the same way that it is today. So it's kind of hard to get a national pulse on what's going on. So when that really started to happen, you felt like he was locally famous and connected to your family and that sort of thing, but just had no idea how big he was until you went to college.
Yeah. And I feel like he had kind of an, and I don't mean this in like an arrogant way, but he had like an aura of like, he had a dream and he was chasing it, and he felt like he was chasing success and like all the ups and downs of that. So I feel like that I kind of took that and knew like that he was like, I don't know, special. Like I felt like there was something going on before he was famous, even because it was just like he had this way of going about the world, like just existing, where he just had a big personality in a way, even though he was sort of a quiet guy. If from like a lot of people that knew him said he was sort of soft and gentle and quiet, but he kind of turned it on frequently. That was his whole life, was turning it on so that he could sell or pitch or just give people an experience.
And you talked about the kind of I don't know how to word it, but the local fame, we'll call it, like at shows. The other pitch people knew him well and really revered him. By the time I knew your dad, he was already famous. Right? He was just when he was starting out on TV and kind of growing. And I got to go to a home show with him, even like late into his fame, let's say, or, it really skyrocketed by that point. And so it was a little different, but I gather that it was like that for a long time in home shows. What I mean is I went to the Charlotte Christmas show, which is a big home and garden type show that goes on every year. And we were pitching a product that we're testing for OxyClean. I used to do a lot of the new product marketing back in the day. And so we were going there. Billy tested from a booth. We filmed it, but really just trying to get a sense of like, is this a product we want to launch, et cetera? And then I had the joy or opportunity of walking the show with your dad after I'd done a few pitches. And man, it was like walking with the most famous person in the world. And he was kind to everybody, right? The pitchmen, especially, like everybody knew him, but the pitchmen revered him. And was it like that when you were younger? So before he had sort of his TV fame, his national fame, was it similar just because of that magnetic personality he had? What was it like on the floor in these home and garden shows?
Yeah, I think there's a definite like family vibe to the pitchmen, like the old school pitchmen and pitchwomen. And basically I think that's just how it is. And he represented sort of like what's possible for someone who's like in sales like that. So I think that there was that, but I also think that he was just like a fun guy. He had fun with it. So I think he was very close with everyone. And so being like, I don't know, once he started to reach that success, like you're saying, I think it just like multiplied, and it was just like, he's the success story of our industry. Like there aren't many other people you could think of that transcended simply being a pitch person.
Agreed. And yeah, to that level of fame, especially, I have my opinion as to why he was so successful. What are your thoughts though? Like, what do you think made him have that magnetic personality that connected with, hundreds of millions of people? Like everybody knew him and knows him, for what he was, for what he represented. What do you think was different about him?
Well, I think it's exactly what you're talking about, or what we're talking about, which is he took the principles of selling directly to someone's face and brought them to television. And I think that this is an old art form that goes back, civilizations. Like there was always salespeople. So, but in this form, the mid 1900s had these these shows where you'd be on the corner selling some product, and it's all about the art of bringing them in. They call it valuing the tip, and getting their attention, getting them to stay, having fun, cracking jokes, kind of like having a bit to get through, but also improvising with them. And so he just like, he took that. And I think what happened was up until the OxyClean commercial, all infomercials were 30 minutes long. So they took that and they made it a 2-minute infomercial, call now at the end of it. And it just like changed the industry. So what I'm trying to say is that that's the main reason, is that he just had like this lifetime of apprenticeship from these legends that you never know their name, but they died out now, most of them, but he learned from all them. He retained that skill, evolved it in his own way, brought it to TV. And then on top of that, I think he genuinely was just like a working class dude, and people knew that and people got that. And I think that the combination of those things just connects with America.
And you used the word at the end that's the reason I always give, is he was genuine. So and that really came out. I think the experience is absolutely part of it. There are other pitchmen that are good and on the home and garden trade show floor, they've got the energy, et cetera, but they've never transcended to be as good, right? As Billy was. And part of it, I think, is, so there's the experience side. There's also just, he was a good person, right? And that genuine nature when whether you were, I was on set with him, you were too, right? And he's pitching to camera, but man, you just believed or knew that he believed in what he was saying. He loved these products. He wanted to sell, he wanted to get them out there. And there was that kind of integrity that came through, as well as the energy behind it. But that's the word that I most often use, beyond his personality and everything else that of course he had going for him.
Well, my biggest, like the word that always comes to mind when people ask about like my dad as a human is generous. And I don't know if a lot of people know this, but like he, not just to me, not just to my family, to friends and other people in the business. I have countless people who have told me how that he helped them with money or something, or, just helped them in some way. He connected them to someone and he went out of his way to pull them up somehow. And I have people who feel that I'm owed a favor from them because one person, he paid for the lawyer for the divorce that they were going through. And he's just like, yeah, I'm indebted to your dad, so whatever you need. And so that kind of ripples out long after he's passed away. And so that's my memory of my dad. And a little story I share sometimes, and it's one of my favorites, is one time we were at a grocery store in Tampa together. This was probably 2 years before he died. And he drove, like, I feel like his weakness with money was that he loved luxury cars, and he would lease these Bentleys, and he had a Rolls Royce Phantom at one point, Escalade, and we didn't need all these cars. It was just like, he was poor growing up and he became wealthy, and he spent way too much money, like most people do from that background. And so anytime he pulled up somewhere, he would kind of pull up like he was the mayor or something. And, he loved showing the car off. He loved when people would be like, oh, can I sit in it? Or he'd give him the keys. There's plenty of those stories on shoots where they'd say, oh, that Bentley's cool. He's like, yeah, you want to drive it? And he'd like throw him the keys. And so, he wasn't like showing off. I think he was just like, look how fun this is. Like, let's just enjoy this. And one time all these kids were at this grocery store and they kind of swarmed the car. And they were just like, what's going on? They don't know who it was. He gets out. The parents all recognize him. A couple of the kids know who he is. And it's kind of like this frenzy, like this small scale frenzy at the grocery store. He starts signing autographs and taking pictures. And we finally went in the store, and he came out with like a cart full of OxyClean and just started giving it out. And that's kind of how he was he wanted to like over deliver when people recognized him. He was just like, he knew it was the reason that he even got to live the way he did, was that people recognized him and trusted him. So, and that kind of spins off into the bigger part of the story, which is when OxyClean, and you would know this, when OxyClean became more corporate and was purchased by a bigger company, kind of got a little bit more like just corporate, let's say. So it became harder to just like get the free product, because he used to just ask for some and get it and give it away. So people would always ask him for product, And what he ended up doing regularly, because I lived with him in this time, he would go to the store and he would just buy loads of it and give it out and say that he got it for free. He would just buy it at the store and he would just say, yeah, it's all good. They give it to me, but at that point he wasn't getting any for free. So it just represents like how I view him, just always kind of trying to do that kind of thing,
Yeah, and I'd echo that. I mean, nobody knows him as well as you, of course, but it's something I saw a lot on set is he was kind to everybody, right? Everybody that came around him, it didn't matter whether it was, the client flying in, it was paying him to be on the shoot, or whether it was a production assistant or somebody coming in to work for an hour delivering food. It didn't matter. It was kind to everybody. For me, I've tried to explain my understanding of fame and how it can change you. And it was miraculous to me how I don't think it changed Billy, at least from my perspective. Again, you know him intimately, but at least it didn't take the generosity, the genuine nature away from him, as far as I could tell, right? Where when I was on set with him, I felt like I was doting, right? I wanted to make sure Billy had exactly the drink he needed and everything, because you wanted him to be on, right? He's only on for, call it, I don't know, an hour of talking over the course of a 10-hour shoot day or whatever it is. So you want to make sure he's got everything he absolutely needs, because it helps us, right? As we were at the producers at the time, or we're working with the producers, but the client company, let's call it. So you wanted to really treat him that way. And I felt like, at that level, like a lot of celebrities, that's their whole lives are like that, right? People are looking up to him. They're always kind to him. They're giving him stuff. And a lot of them let it go to their head. And I think that's where I think it's interesting to see Billy. I just didn't see that. It didn't go to his head, where he appreciated it every time I was with him, at least to get whatever he got. And I think, like you said, maybe remember his roots, remember who he was, as opposed to who people thought he was.
Yeah. It didn't change him. It definitely affected him.
Sure.
The pressure of it all. And ultimately I feel like that's what leads to his death, is that it was a lot, on his shoulders. But I think you're right. And that's something a lot of people probably don't understand, even to this day. Like, he was not at the level, he was very famous, but financially it was kind of complicated. And he made a lot of people money. He made money for a lot of people, but he made a lot of money, but he got screwed a bunch of different ways. And I think that comes with his sort of generosity and like kind of assuming the best in people. Whereas he would get into kind of bad deals sometimes, and he'd trust people that he shouldn't have trusted. And on top of that, he didn't really have like a PR person. He barely had an accountant, there was a lot of things that he just didn't know how to do. And he wasn't famous long enough for it really to hit him of like what he needed to do to like manage all this. I do think if he would have been alive for another 5 years, he would have drastically had to change his lifestyle and, his team and all that. And I know I was sort of serving as his PR person in a way. I was like 21 before he died, and I was like running. I made him start a Twitter account. I had him like messaging fans and stuff, and we'd send out stickers and autographs to people. And like that was the only consideration that was given to that kind of thing, was me kind of insisting like, hey, people obviously like want more from you, and like they want you to be, they want to interact with you, and like that's possible now. So that all that to say, he was still kind of just a guy, even though he was famous and like recognizable. He had major health issues. He had a bad hip. You probably saw him during that time when he, long story short, he had a bad hip. He got a hip replacement. The hip replacement did not take, so they had to do another one. The second one also didn't take, and he got a staph infection. So his third hip replacement was scheduled for the Monday after he died, which was a Saturday night. It was scheduled for that Monday. And they told him, if this one doesn't work, you might never walk again. Like, we can't do another one. So he never got to go to that surgery. But, he was going through a lot in that time, on top of all this pressure, not having a team of experienced people knowing how to handle this kind of stuff. And he was abusing painkillers just because he was in constant pain all the time. So, I think that's just a side of my dad's life, especially the end, that people don't understand. And it reflects even now when people just assume that I'm some like trust fund billionaire kid, and I've definitely had tons of perks and definitely some nepotism in the production industry, but you know, there's not like some fund I've been living off of. I've gotten some royalty checks over the years, but all that to say, like, I'm just a working guy too, and I'm hustling, and I feel just like my dad at his age where I am now. So at the age he was where I am now, like I feel that way, kind of just like trying to figure out where my ambitions lead.
Let's switch gears and talk about that a little bit. So there's a couple of big projects you're working on. I'd love to get into your music, but while we're on the topic of your dad, you run something called the Laundry Project, and our audience, you can check it out at billymays.org or BM as in Billy Mays 3.me. To learn more about all the stuff that's going on, both the music side as well as the Laundry Project. But so on the Laundry Project, tell us, what is that? So tell us about the project itself and how you're involved in it and how it kind of carries on the legacy of your dad, but also how you're helping people.
Yeah. Man, it's a great organization. I'm not the founder of it. My friend Jason is. They're a Tampa based organization, and the entire premise of this part of it is they facilitate free laundry day pop-ups at laundromats around the country. It's that simple. Like, raise some money, basically rent out a laundromat, invite people to come for this block of hours, and all your laundry is paid for and done, and we assist with the laundry. There's volunteers. It kind of becomes like this community center. And the whole point, they say they say they're hope dealers, and it's just like giving hope. It's helping in a small way, but it's like an overlooked expense, is that a lot of families have to take all this, multiple loads of laundry, and it only costs more and more, the detergent, the washer, the dryer. So, that's what it is I volunteered a lot of them over the years, and I've always tried to like direct any kind of donations that came my way, or, any project that I've ever done with my dad's face on it. Like, we've done shirts and all that. All the proceeds always end up going somewhere, and the majority of them have gone to the Laundry Project, along with other causes. But the Laundry Project has slowly become the one that I feel the most connected to, for obvious reasons, with the laundry stuff. And, one of my dad's catchphrases with OxyClean was "Long live your laundry." So we've sort of adopted that with the Laundry Project, and we're sort of developing what the relationship looks like. But the way it started is just last month, just about a month ago, we launched the Atlanta chapter, which is where I live, right in my neighborhood. We raised money. I raised it in my local community, and we did the free laundry day. We served 50 plus families in one day, and it was just a great time. So another reason why it's become such a partnership now, Jason, who runs it, he's just a great, like, his vision is so clear. He gets it done. It's like very boots on the ground, grassroots kind of organization. There's no like bloat of where the money goes. It's basically just him, another guy who does like the accounting and stuff, and then like volunteers and helpers and me, and a lot of people just giving their time. So just recently we found out that they're on their 15th anniversary since the organization was launched. And I was doing the math, and I was like, wait, I'm on the 15-year anniversary of when my dad died. It turns out he launched it the same month my dad died. And so it was kind of like this light bulb moment of like, let's just see what we can do. So for now, I have the Atlanta chapter. We're looking to our next one. We're about to find some sponsors to fund it moving forward. But, we're aiming for, if you follow me on social media, I've done giveaways. I've done raffles where if you donate, you're entered into a raffle. I recently gave away one of the last autographed pictures of my dad. I give away stickers, and I had a Pitchman DVD. Like, just, I have memorabilia, and we like to auction it off for this cause. And we only have bigger things planned for the next year along those lines. So if you follow me, you'll see all that if you're interested in getting any of that stuff. We have art, there's a lot of fun things.
That's awesome. And I did not realize it was, started at the same time, coincidentally. And then you, of course, joined on and helped the PR to grow, or the recognition to grow. If people are interested in donating or volunteering or being a part of this in any way, what's the best way to get in contact?
If you just go to laundrybycurrent.org, the bigger company is Current Initiatives. If you just go to laundrybycurrent.org, it tells the story of it. There's videos. There's a volunteer thing, I believe, like a sign up. But even just reaching out to me, I can connect you with someone maybe in your city if you're interested in starting one in your city. It takes a little work, but if you're genuinely just someone who has that time and energy, let's see if it's possible.
And to reach you, you said to reach out directly to you.
Sure,
Should
yeah.
go through your website,
Yeah,
or what's the best way?
There's email. Like, I'm pretty easy to find. Any social media platform, I'll probably see it eventually. Infinitethird.com, my music website, has a contact. BillyMays.org has a contact that actually goes to my email. So I'm reachable.
Perfect. So you mentioned Infinite Third. Let's talk about that a little bit. That's a big part of what you do today is the music side. So I love the connection. From the outside, I look at it as your dad was a creator, right? So he created, you mentioned catchphrases, right? Long live your laundry. I believe he came up with that. If not that, certainly most other catchphrases. Like, I remember going to shoots and we would spend 3 months working on demonstrations and ironing out this perfect script. And then we'd show up with your dad the day before and he would Billyize it or whatever, right? He would put his own catchphrase and like, this is so much better. Like, it changed everything. And nobody could write for him. Like, we would do the shell, right? But he would add his catchphrases in. And so many of them just seemed like they were off the cuff. And I'm sure that comes from so many years of experience of live pitching, live selling for, I think, 17 years, if I remember the number right, before he ever went on TV or even HSN, and just honing his craft. And then, of course, his unique personality, his humor, and everything else that went inside that. So anyways, he was a creator and you are a creator in a slightly different way, right? But it's, I think that shared connection is how I would view it from the outside. But let's talk about your music.
Before we jump to that, you brought up the catchphrases, and I think it's a funny little thing that the meme that goes around, like, in every different form is, but wait, there's more. And it's my dad. The funny thing is, he didn't really say, but wait, there's more that many times. I don't think, if ever, on an actual commercial. There's like some funny little clips of him saying it sort of as a joke, but he was more fond of saying, like, but I'm not done yet, or that's not all. And I think the reason for that is that Ron Popeil was known for, but wait, there's more. And I think he had such respect for Ron that he just wanted to change it and not just like do his exact thing. And I know he had huge respect for Ron Popeil because he talked about him all the time as basically like his inspiration for the TV side of things. But it's funny because I made a video about this a couple of years ago, and people call it a Mandela effect, that weird thing where everyone remembers him saying it, but really I think you're just remembering seeing the memes and everyone kind of referencing that. But anyway, yes.
That's funny. As I go back now, I got to watch those videos because I'm definitely a victim of the Mandela effect on that.
I know, right? Yeah.
He certainly made infomercials, I think, even that much more present in everybody's lives. So maybe just we remember back to Ron Popeil. Or the phrase is kind of intuitive with what infomercials are. But you're right. I'll have to go watch those videos. So on the music side, so tell us about Infinite Third and what do you do on the music side?
Well, I have always made music since like high school. And I lived with my mom, like I said. She was a big supporter. My dad was also a big supporter of me making music at an early age. He got me a guitar. I took guitar lessons that I didn't really take seriously, but I was always fond of recording, self-teaching myself to put together albums and music, instrumental music. And it's just something that always kind of I felt right doing, and I still do it to this day. But up until the year my dad died, I was making a certain type of music just for fun. I never released anything. And then the year that my dad died was February 2009. But just as important a part of my story is that in February of 2009, I escaped an apartment fire in the middle of the night in my apartment, and I lost everything I owned. But thankfully, I didn't get hurt or anything. So I lost all my music gear, all my clothes, all my pictures, like anything you could think of, I lost it. And it was like super humbling, traumatic. I was lucky that my dad was able to help me get back on my feet, but it really messed me up. And it kind of like messed with my creativity and all that. So I had to kind of start fresh with like just a guitar, no equipment, no pedals. And I just started like sort of playing very simply, and that was where my style kind of changed into this emotionally connected like form of therapy where I would just like, access catharsis about what I was going through. So I'd started doing that. And then just 4 months later in June, my dad died. And that also just like compounded and, way heavier to just lose my dad out of nowhere. And at that point, the music just like stopped. I was grieving. I was very just like numb. And I remember in August of 2009, another example of my dad's generosity to someone else was that he never went to this place, but through a long series of events, he helped a person who owns a celebrity retreat center in California. It's a long story, but Anthony Sullivan, his partner, went there, and they ended up gifting her a car through some series of events. And my dad pitched in, even not knowing her, just because she helped them out. And apparently he had an open invite to go there, but he never got to go. So when they heard that he died, they reached out to me and said, hey, would you like a week here at this retreat? Which this retreat center is like thousands and thousands. This is where like Oprah goes. You work out every day, you hike, you eat raw, healthy food, and it's just like an experience. And I went in August of 2009. And that was I remember the exact moment when we're on one of these hikes. It was a silent hike in the mountains, and the music just instantly just like came flooding back. All the music I had been working on, developing, just sort of came back. And from that moment on, I recorded this album when I got home, and it became my debut album. And I released it in December of 2009. We just hit the 15th anniversary of that 3 days ago, December 15th. Well, I just gave away when we're recording this. But so basically that's the start of me as a musician, like not just for fun. I'm a musician now, and they ended up using some of those songs on Discovery Channel for the tributes to my dad. So it sort of got intertwined with the grieving of my dad in multiple ways, not just with me, but with people who watched that and they connected with that music. The album's called Gently, Infinite Third Gently. It's on all the streaming services now. It's still pretty special. I'm planning to do a vinyl release of it to commemorate the 15-year anniversary next year. And basically from then on, I've found my way as a musician. And what that means is that I had this process, which I imagine we're going to talk about, which is, why didn't I become a pitchman? Or why, I was invited to try and to be part of that world. And I was in such a desperate kind of like artistic zone where I needed to create art. And I had this like vision of who I was and what I wasn't. And what I knew I wasn't was a pitchman. So I was like, I'm not going to sit here and sell cleaning products. And like, that's not who I am. I'm not a pitchman. I'm an artist. Like that was for years. That was how I felt. I even kind of distanced myself from my dad's legacy in a lot of ways, where I just wanted to be me. I wanted to be a musician. And slowly over the years, I started to realize as I became an independent musician on the road, doing these DIY tours, selling merch, I started to realize I'm having to pitch myself. I'm having to pitch this music itself. I'm having to pitch the merch. I would perform, and then right after that, I'd be at a table, a booth, pitching my merch. And it hit me at one point, right when I was actually going through a divorce at the time, and I was on tour, and it hit me that like this is how my dad felt. He was divorced. He was trying to make his way with his art form. His art form was getting in front of a booth, performing and trying to sell things. My art form is performing and then trying to sell things. And that's when it hit me. I was just like, I don't need to distance myself from this really at all. I can pay tribute to my dad. I can be Billy Mays and be an artist. I can be whatever I want. And I don't have to do anything. I don't have to not do anything. I can just see where it takes me. And what that led to is billymays.org, which is just tribute. It's just a tribute site where I collect memes. I collect tribute art. I do all this nonprofit stuff. I sort of manage it out of my own pocket. Like there's no revenue. I'm just paying for it at all times. And it's a special part of my life. I connect with a lot of people through it. And people reach out to me. It's a fun fact to learn once you know me, once you know about my music. Oh yeah, and by the way, like his dad is that guy you know from growing up. And so all that to say that I'm where we're at now is that I'm Billy Mays. There's no like shame or, you know, discomfort around talking about him, about not talking about him. It's just, I'm in a good place. And the Laundry Project has become this way of like really doing what I've always wanted to do, which is take that loss that we experienced in 2009 and funnel it into something tangible and good in the world. And that's what I think ultimately would have happened with my dad, is I think he would have continued kind of grinding and becoming more famous and more rich or whatever. But eventually he would have had to face like, what am I doing? Like, am I able to slow down and give back in a more real way? And so that's just what I'm following now, is that's what I want to do.
I love that. And I think sometimes dealing with loss of someone so important in our lives can help us on that process to get perspective on life. And I lost my father earlier this year, so almost a year ago. And thank you. And it's, but you know, I think it's healthy to celebrate the lives of those we admire, right? And our parents, hopefully for a lot of us or most of us, is, you know, someone that we really look up to. And, you know, it's sad, right? But there's so many positive things too, to carry on their legacy, to learn from what they taught us, learn from who they were. We don't need to be the same, but we can learn from their strengths and their weaknesses, right, along the way. And it's, you know, it can really be a celebration. So I think it's healthy to talk about the great things and maybe the hard things too, right? None of our parents, just like we, are not perfect, right? We learn from their foibles or their mistakes just as much as we learn from their strengths along the way. But it's great to celebrate their lives and what they've done for us and for so many others. On the music side, so what you talked about the album, and again, for our audience, check it out at infinitethird.com. We'll put all these links. Thank you. And we'll put all these notes or all these URLs in the show notes for people who might be driving or whatever, and check them out later to check out various things that you're working on. So where do you distribute, or, you know, for our audience's benefit, like if they wanted to benefit from your music besides listening to it, you also create music for certain purposes, if you wouldn't mind talking about that?
Yeah, well, there's a lot to it. I've made tons of albums, ambient albums, meditative kind of albums, heavier kind of like almost metal albums. Like they all kind of fall into this world. I'm constantly trying to make music. So it is quantity over quality sometimes with me. Like for me, it's a practice. So I have all these different outlets, and it's like a spiritual practice for me. I perform live. I have a show this Friday actually in Atlanta, and I play festivals. If you see the video or any photo of me, I play on the ground. I play almost surrounded by a spaceship of pedals and lights and a guitar, and I do live looping. I improvise. That's how I perform, is just this sort of cathartic experience. It's not really a traditional type of music performance where I'm just like playing songs. So there's that. You can catch me live. I'm not really touring right now so much. I play a few festivals in different cities, but right now I'm more Atlanta based and online based. For a while I was live streaming during the pandemic. I was doing my performance, but like on Twitch, and I built a little community there. I also compose for people. I've done podcast themes. People use my music in their documentaries or their movies or whatever. I'm very open to just letting people use my songs for, you know, whatever fits their budget, or even just for free for certain types of projects. And I've done some custom ones, just like if it fits within my realm of what the type of stuff I make. And yeah, I mean, you can find all my stuff on the streaming services. If anyone's familiar with Bandcamp, that has the most of my music. That's like, has got not only all this stuff that you see, it has private stuff that you can like subscribe to, which is more like demos and rare things and live recordings and stuff. I also have a Patreon, which I have a decent amount of supporters who basically subscribe to support me $3.33 a month. and I release a new piece of music for them every Wednesday. It's just on Patreon. So they kind of get to follow along on my creative process. And yeah, I mean, there's plenty of ways.
I think most of these you mentioned you can find them at bm3.me. That's sort of kind of your library of everything you're doing. Yeah, cool. So that might be the easiest one for our audience. So as we come to the end, this has been a really fun conversation. I want to talk about a couple more things though. And going back to your dad, what do you think? The world has changed so much in 15 years, right? Where he was at the pinnacle of TV pitchmen, right? Probably ever, because that world is different. It doesn't exist in the same way as it used to before. And I suspect he would still be doing that, right? He's so good at it, and there's still a value in it. But what else? What do you think? What else do you think he would be doing today as the world has changed?
Well, so there's a couple aspects to this. I do hear all the time, like, imagine if Billy Mays was alive, how the numbers he would do on TikTok, or like or Cameo, where people pay to have you do like a message to someone for their birthday. I do think he would be doing that, and I would be filming the videos and uploading them. Like, I would be managing that. So if, going along those lines, like, he would thrive in this environment in a lot of ways. There'd be a lot of viral videos, a lot of different like brand partnerships in different ways. A lot of people don't know that he was signed to be the Taco Bell spokesperson before he died, and they never got to shoot anything. And it was a big deal. It was a major contract, and they were going to film infomercials for Taco Bell, like sort of parody type stuff. And, that's something that I think would have propelled him into an even bigger stratosphere of what he was doing, because he had just started to be in on the joke a little bit and self-referential and acting sort of more rather than just pitching and being himself. Because there's a couple skits out there he did that you kind of get to see that he was aware of, like the meme that he was before we were even talking about memes too much. He was definitely a meme. So I think he would have definitely capitalized on that. There is a world where I think he would have, unfortunately or fortunately, no matter, depending on who you are. For me, I feel like this is not the future I would have wanted for myself or for us, but I do think he would have ended up on Celebrity Apprentice and found his way into the current cabinet somehow, the incoming cabinet. I don't think that's what I would have enjoyed in my life, but there's an alternate timeline somewhere where he's pitching for the president, and and I'm publicly getting into arguments with him.
That's funny, especially now as we've got a president that is selling like Trump watches and Trump shoes, and
yes,
he would have been a great spokesperson.
And I see a lot of tweets and stuff where it basically people calling him Billy Mays, and so that's one way I think he would have possibly gone. Also, I do think, I don't know. I do think he would have found like a new avenue. I don't know what that would have been. It could have been acting. I don't know. Like, he did have good timing. He was developing this kind of like, he had that improvisational way where I think a little bit longer, and he would have been kind of like more like reliable as a character in things. And he probably would have found some kind of way into entertainment. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say, but that's a lot of the options, I think.
Like you said, alternate timeline, but it's fun to think about. So let's talk about what's next for you. So you and I were chatting before this a little bit, that as you've evolved and explored your connection with your dad and a willingness to do some of the things maybe he did, but in your own way, that you're potentially considering being a pitch person or pitch man. Is that correct?
Well, I think I mentioned it earlier that I sort of feel like I became my own little pitch person, like my own version of it. And I'm not my dad. I don't have that volume, or, maybe I do. I don't know. I haven't really accessed it. So I do sort of have a curiosity about what if I did just try it sort of like as an experiment and sort of step into his shoes, and it'll help no matter what to promote the laundry project. So I am exploring the idea of, I'm already in touch with a lot of the old pitchmen, the ones that are still around. Sully's one of them. I talk to him somewhat often. Anthony Sullivan, the current OxyClean guy. We've talked about it. I have access to a lot of wisdom and a lot of skill about this. So I'm sort of exploring the idea of kind of taking the plunge and seeing what would it be like if I were Billy Mays here, in 2024, 2025, what would that be? And I'm open to suggestions or invitations and seeing what might work for that.
I love that. It's as I said before, it's got my juices really going and thinking about it. So we'll talk more about that from our perspective, but others that might be listening or watching, check out bm3.me. You can get a hold of Billy directly at billymays.org and infinitethird.com as well. Well, Billy, what's next for you?
Well, I'm still making music. I have yet another album coming out next year. It's a fun one. It's a side project under a different name. It's just I find myself on all these different paths with music, and it's just what I love to do. I would do it even if we couldn't release it. Like, I just love the process of it. But yeah, I mean, Laundry Project's a big part of next year for me. We're going to be seeing how far we can take it. There will probably be more fundraising type things where we give away stuff and do some fun contests. I have been developing sort of slowly a documentary about my dad's life. I've teamed with some producers recently, and we're talking about what that might look like. And, when I talk to people about it, it seems like a no-brainer. Like, yeah, let's tell the story. But I think there's more to the story. There's the industry itself. There's this esoteric art of pitching. There's a lot of little fun things that come up if you really explore my dad's life that don't even involve him, that are just other side roads to go down. So it should be fun. And I think it's going to end up, as a big release sometime eventually. It could be years down the road, but look out for that. I'll be a big part of it. And yeah, I mean, that's as far as I can see right now.
Well, keep us posted on that front. We'll have you back on the show. We can, as the documentary launches, and talk more about that and other stuff as it comes up as well. Well, is there anything I didn't ask you that you think could be helpful for our audience to hear?
You did a great job, and I think we covered quite a lot. I can't express enough how important the Laundry Project feels as like a symbol. Just look more into it, connect with it. Mainly, whenever we do our next steps, it would just be helpful to have more people interested and more people sharing links and stuff like that. Because that's the biggest thing. I'm not an influencer or a pitch person like quite yet, and I don't know like what that looks like for me. So really, the more community I can have that supports these kinds of things, the more we can help people. So that's where my heart's at right now. And of course, anyone who listens to my music, thank you, because that's a big deal to me. It's not for everyone. Let's say that it's a very experimental type of music, but I feel like the people who connect with it, they really connect with it, and it's usually people who have experienced some kind of loss or grief, because it's very emotionally connected for me. So if that's you, give it a shot.
And I love it personally. So yeah, check it out on, as you mentioned, all the streaming platforms, or of course, infinitethird.com, or the many websites we've talked about. Well, Billy, this has been super fun for me and a great experience. I really appreciate the reconnection. It's been a lot of fun to talk with you, to really get to know you a lot better and see all that you're doing with your life. And, reiterate one more time, the Laundry Project, I think, is such a powerful thing. It's a need that we maybe don't think about in our everyday lives. If we have a washing machine in our house, it may be easy, right? For many that don't, this is such a need that goes unaddressed because it's gotten so much more expensive. And man, clean clothes just can change your life, right? Change how you feel about who you are in this world, right? It doesn't change who you are, but it changes your own perception. And that can be so powerful, right? We don't really care if they're a little bit dirty, whatever, but it's going to change their personal perception and how they fit into the world and, enjoy it. So I love the project for sure. Encourage our audience to please go check it out. And, the many different websites we've talked about, but Billy, thanks again. This has been super fun. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, John. Yes.
Did you know you can meet with a member of my team absolutely free for a 30-minute strategy consultation? We've launched and grown hundreds of products since 2007 and learned some of our strategies while growing OxyClean back in Billy Mays' dad's days. We're here to help. So please go to harvestgrowth.com and set up a call if you'd like to discuss further.